And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this very, very exciting day today, the second day of June 2022. And it's a beautiful day out here in Brisbane. Well, it is chilly, 13 degrees, but sunny. And the wind has died down a little bit, and that makes it a little bit more bearable because with that wind and the chill factor, it feels actually colder than what it is. But today, even though it's 13 degrees, it's still feeling much, much better, more comfortable. Well, right now, let's carry on with the news for today, which we will finish off with the Daily India report. Right now, Labor has broken a world record, record here in Australia with the new ministry and the lineup. Let's take a look at that wonderful, diverse lineup.
Together, they're the most diverse ministry Australia's seen. More women than ever, and a front bench that better reflects the nation's migrant story and First Nations history. Bibles, Qurans and kangaroo skins accompanying new ministers of the Crown, along with family. But the economy can afford little celebration.
These national accounts are a glimpse of the mess that the former government left behind for us to clean up.
The new Treasurer bringing a distinctly glass-half-empty attitude to the first major economic data since the election of the Albanese government. The economy grew by 0.8% in the March quarter, slightly higher than market expectations, and 3.3% over the previous 12 months.
The national accounts are notoriously backward-looking.
Jim Chalmers warning a lot's happened since the end of March. Inflation spiked, interest rates have started their march up, petrol prices have increased, while electricity and gas prices have surged.
This perfect storm of energy price spikes is doing enormous damage to our employers, to our households and to our national economy.
The work starts now.
The new look front bench meeting for the first time.
We have been given a great responsibility. If we get it right, we can be here in the long term and really change the country for the better.
Anthony Albanese's 30-strong ministry includes a record 13 women.
After 3 very long years, it's really good to feel like we have that opportunity now to do more for Australian women, and I'm really glad that they placed their faith in us.
No matter who your parents were, no matter what your station in life, there is a place for you in this parliament.
One of the newly sworn-in Cabinet's first decisions, tackling soaring gas prices, which are hurting households and industry. Australia is one of the world's biggest gas exporters, yet wholesale prices have shot up 50-fold. One existing option would be to force LNG companies to limit international sales to bolster domestic supply, which would be a big call for a young government. Andrew Probyn, ABC.
It will be a bit cold, but it might be a call in the right direction. So, well, right now, we know the new ministry with the 30 plus, and of course, it is wonderful to see the diversity, and of course, together with the diversity, the gender equality. So, which is wonderful to see all that reflected in the government of Australia. But how will the 47th Parliament look like?
Today, there are many challenges to democracy. I won't diagnose them all. However, there are a couple of parting suggestions. You can be both robust and civil at the same time. If this House regularly demonstrates poor behaviour, it diminishes members and dilutes public respect.
In a valedictory that became a prophecy, outgoing and well-respected Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tony Smith, directly connected the public's disgust with what it sees happening in Parliament with voters' desertion of the major parties and the rise of independents.
The major parties need to consider how to address this.
The election has delivered the biggest challenge to the two-party system that has been entrenched since 1910. The 47th Parliament is notable for a huge crossbench comprising a diverse group of long-standing rural independents, new independents largely from the inner cities, and a record number of Greens. Many are seeking to reform the way this Parliament will run in practice, both to improve its tone and to respect the critical mass of this third force in the chamber.
I think as a priority we need to bring back the trust in government, but trust in our parliamentary system, and actually have a chamber that works where you see robust debate.
Anthony Albanese.
The new Prime Minister has insisted he has heard voters' demand for a better parliament.
We need to change the way that politics operates in this country. We need to be more inclusive. We can do that in this parliament.
The independents have something of a unity ticket on the things they want to see change in the parliament. The man who they have to win over is Tony Burke, the government's new Leader of the House, responsible for the daily running of the parliament.
The most important thing is to have a government that respects the parliament. There's always going to be some combat, but where the purpose of it became combat and nothing else, sledging and nothing more, a government that has a different approach to that is of itself a radical shift from what we've been dealing with for the last 3 years.
But while Burke is prepared to talk about changing the vibe of the thing, there are clearly limits. Question time is the part of the House of Representatives Day that the public would be most familiar with. The independents want to be able to ask more questions and an end to the infamous Dorothy Dixer, the question from a government backbencher inviting a minister to say how good the government is and how terrible the opposition is.
Will the Prime Minister outline how the Morrison government has demonstrated in this parliament that it is on the side of the Australian people? Have there been any alternative approaches on display?
It's a pretense of a debate. There's no real mechanism whereby we can pull up the Prime Minister and the Minister in question to actually answer a question. So one suggestion is actually that there be a follow-up question allowed with a limited amount of time for response.
Now that there's 16 crossbenchers, we'll need a lot more than one question in question time if the parliament is to be run in a fair way. And I tell you what, history shows that the crossbenchers are the people that ask the straightest questions.
There is nothing wrong, I don't believe, with a government using the one time of the day that every member of parliament's in the room to explain some of the things that the government's doing.
The more important part of what the House of Representatives does, however, is that it passes laws which dictate the way we are governed. Governments with big majorities usually get legislation through the House without any significant debate. So it has become the practice and habit for the really substantial debates and amendments on our laws to take place in the Senate. But both the government and the crossbench agree there should be a return to more substantive discussion and amendments in the House.
Yet unfortunately, the
really detailed debate on legislation occurs in what is called the third reading stage, in which individual clauses and amendments to them are discussed.
To give you an example, Laura, in the last Parliament I moved an amendment for the Environmental Protection Biodiversity Act, and the government used its numbers to gag debate, suspend procedure, skip the consideration in detail stage and go straight to a final vote.
It should be absolutely rare for legislation to be rushed through, and I'm actively trying to work through different ways at the moment that we can give people the opportunity who want to speak on bills to be able to do so.
Tony Burke says that...
And it will be interesting to see how things transpire out into this 47th Parliament. Well, right now, looking at the national economy, we know that the inflation is going up, but it hasn't stopped people from spending money. As we know, a lot of people have put their overseas travel plans on hold. So that way they've got a little bit more disposable income, at their disposal. So, the spending has not stopped despite the inflation challenges. Let's take a look at that report.
Ben Jarman, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
The Treasurer Jim Chalmers today said the first quarter national accounts give us a glimpse of the mess the former government left behind. Is he right? Is the economy in a mess?
Well, there's definitely no shortage of headwinds that we saw in the first quarter. Of course, we had the Omicron-related shutdowns, which really had a big impact on hours worked. But we think, given those constraints and given that inflation was also a challenge for households, that the numbers were pretty good.
Well, consumers were quite strong in the first quarter. How long can they draw down on their savings as real wages continue to go backwards?
Well, that is a pretty key behavioural question, if you like. On paper, the saving rate's certainly high enough that we could see that come down pretty consistently for a number of quarters and through into 2023. The question, as you highlight, though, is will they be willing to do so when asset prices are falling? Our forecast kind of splits the difference, I guess, and it implies that they will keep doing it, but not at the same rate that we've seen so far in the recovery. The distribution is certainly going to be far from even, and we do expect those lower income households will definitely still be feeling the pinch from higher inflation.
And speaking of consumer spending, there was a big build-up in inventories in the first quarter. What's behind that, and how's that going to play out into the following quarters?
We've seen globally some big moves in both inventories and trade in the first quarter. That tends to be something that happens when globally there's some supply side constraints, as we know are a huge factor at the moment, and the slowing China and its own COVID related issues there are probably a big part of that. So we think that story is going to unwind gradually as we go through the year, and probably the first quarter was the worst we'll see.
Are we seeing that switch back from goods to services, the way that consumers behaved, I guess, before the pandemic, and what does that mean for that build-up?
To an extent, we are seeing that. It was probably not an ideal quarter to be measuring that dynamic when we did have Omicron hitting the services side of the economy. Accommodation, food service, people going out and about was certainly compromised, but we do think that will be a theme as we run through the remainder of this year, is that consumption will tilt back towards more services, and goods should wear some of the brunt of that, as you suggest.
Now, inflation is obviously a major issue for the economy, running above 5%. Do you think today's data will bolster the case for a bigger rate rise from the RBA next week? What's your expectation?
Well, we already expect the RBA to deliver a 40 basis point hike next week, so that's more than the market is pricing, and the story there is really about getting closer to neutral. I think the numbers today show you a consumer and household sector which has still quite a bit of firepower despite the headwinds from rates and inflation. So on the basis of a saving rate that still has further to decline, we think the RBA is going to see itself as having more work to do in terms of normalising rates.
And when you say normalising rate, where do you think rates will peak?
We have the RBA ending the year at 150, which is about as much tightening as they did in the exit from the GFC, and then we have the cash rate peaking at 225 next year.
Some economists, like those at CBA, are saying a more moderate 1.6% will be the top of the rate hiking cycle. Do you think the economy really can handle a stronger interest rate increase?
We think it can over time. So to the extent that households maybe feel in the short run like rates are going up too fast, that will be a reason for the RBA to take a pause. But we should remember that there are some pretty powerful supports here, particularly from the terms of trade and fiscal policy. So unlike the prior decade, we expect fiscal policy to be playing a much more active role in supporting downside scenarios.
Well, markets are betting rates could rise above 3% and then cause home prices to fall in the order of 20%. How plausible is that scenario?
Historically, it's been quite hard to get a coordinated nationwide house price decline of that magnitude, so we don't think it will be that severe. In the short run, we think a 5% pullback nationwide is more likely.
And of course,
so the house prices are tipped to be falling, and it has fallen for the first time in a long time. Here's that report.
Natasha DeSano, her husband and their 3 children recently moved to a bigger property in the mountains, 80 kilometres from Sydney's CBD.
To give them more of an opportunity to be on bigger land, to feel free, be themselves, as well as give us the opportunity to just live a different lifestyle.
Their new house is on a block 20 times the size of their old home, but their mortgage is about the same.
Hi, girls. It's pretty much like we've done a swap, but to me I feel like I have no loan purely because of the happiness that my family and I have here in Kurrajong.
The DeSano's move echoes a trend of people moving out of the city during the pandemic. Properties in regional Australia increased 0.5% in May, but it wasn't enough to stop national prices falling as values declined in Sydney, Melbourne and Canberra. Other capital cities posted price growth, led by Adelaide and Brisbane, but most are now slowing, and it won't stop here.
We've got higher interest rates, higher sensitivity to interest rates because of relatively high debt levels, and more stock coming onto the market over the past few weeks. So I think all of this points to an acceleration in the downturn.
As property prices decline, economists warn people will feel less wealthy and may cut back on their spending, which could lead to a shrinking economy. But in the first 3 months of the year, we were spending big. The economy grew by 0.8% in the March quarter and 3.3% for the year. Business inventories, household and government spending drove the expansion. But household savings fell as Australians spent more on travel and going out. The biggest drag on the economy was a surge in imports, while exports turned negative as commodities production took a hit from worker shortages and bad weather.
These national accounts are a glimpse of the mess that the former government left behind for us to clean up.
As COVID restrictions eased, the hospitality sector picked up and businesses like this coffee wholesaler benefited.
The demand is quite strong for coffee, tea and the social aspect. As discretionary spending tightens up, consumers will still go to the cafe to enjoy that coffee experience.
But Omicron didn't make it easy for Alexander and his team.
We probably had about 40% of our workforce during probably January and February that were impacted.
COVID restrictions are now likely a thing of the past, but with rising inflation, what's clearly in our future are interest rate hikes.
I think that is going to concern the RBA, so that certainly leaves open the option that they could opt for a 40 basis point hike.
So, looking at that, the fuel prices going up, gas prices going up, house prices coming down, interest rates going up. So it's rather a bleak outlook looking into the future, but we'll see how it goes. Well, right now, let's go overseas where jury has ruled in favour of Johnny Depp in a favour of $15 million.
As against Amber Heard, we, the jury, award compensatory damages in the amount of $10 million. As against Amber Heard, we, the jury, award punitive damages in the amount of $5 million. As against John C. Depp II, we, the jury, award compensatory damages in the amount of $2 million. As against John C. Depp II, we, the jury, award punitive damages in the amount of $0.
So there we are, ladies and gentlemen, and the jury has come to that verdict, and it is a historical verdict there as well. But right now it's time to go to our daily India report.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you reports, interviews, features and much more on India and the Indian diaspora. India sends one more consignment of 40,000 metric tons of diesel to crisis-hit Sri Lanka. India on May 31st said that it has delivered one more consignment of 40,000 metric tons of diesel to Sri Lanka to help ease the acute fuel shortage in the debt-ridden island nation, which is grappling with its worst economic crisis. India extended an additional $500 million credit line to Sri Lanka last month to help the neighbouring country import fuel, as it has been struggling to pay for imports after its foreign exchange reserves plummeted sharply in recent times, causing a devaluation of its currency and spiralling inflation. India on May 23rd delivered around 40,000 metric tons of petrol to Sri Lanka. India and Sri Lanka signed a $500 million line of credit agreement for the purchase of petroleum products on February 2, 2022. With the economic crisis and the shortage of forex, the Indian credit line of $500 million for fuel imports has provided a lifeline to the island nation, which is currently experiencing its worst economic crisis since gaining independence in 1948. With long lines for fuel, cooking gas, essentials in short supply and long hours of power cuts, the public has been suffering for months. A total of close to 4 lakh metric tons of various types of fuel have been delivered with Indian assistance in March and April. In keeping with India's neighbourhood first policy, New Delhi has extended this year alone support worth over $3.5 billion to the people of Sri Lanka for helping them overcome their current difficulties. India and China agreed to hold the next round of military talks soon. India and China on May 31st agreed to hold the next round of senior commanders meeting at an early date to achieve complete disengagement from all friction points in eastern Ladakh to create conditions for restoration of normalcy in bilateral ties. The two sides reviewed the situation in eastern Ladakh at a meeting held under the framework of the Working Mechanism for Consultation and Coordination on India-China Border Affairs. The two sides exchanged views on the current situation along the LAC in the western sector in eastern Ladakh, the Indian External Affairs Ministry said. They agreed that as instructed by the two foreign ministers, both sides should continue the discussions through diplomatic and military channels to resolve the remaining issues along the LAC at the earliest to create conditions for the restoration of normalcy in bilateral relations, the MEA said. It further said the two sides agreed to hold next 16th round of senior commanders meeting in an early date to achieve the objective of complete disengagement from all friction points along the LAC in the western sector in accordance with existing bilateral agreements and protocols. Eastern Ladakh is officially referred to as western sector. The third India-Bangladesh passenger train to run from June 1st. The railway line connecting India and Bangladesh New Jalpaiguri-Dhaka Cantonment Mitali Express is all set to run from June 1st. This train would be the third passenger train service that is scheduled to be flagged off from Rail Bhavan in New Delhi on June 1st by the railways ministers of both countries. The new Jalpaiguri-Dhaka Cantonment train, bearing number 13132, will run 2 days a week, that is on Sunday and Wednesday, and for return journey, train number 13131, Dhaka Cantonment New Jalpaiguri Mitali Express will run every Monday and Thursday. The train will cover the distance of around 513 kilometers between New Jalpaiguri in West Bengal and Dhaka Cantonment in Bangladesh in 9 hours. As of now, the train will run with 4 air-conditioned cabin coaches, the 4 air-conditioned chair cars, and will be hauled by a diesel locomotive. Surendra Kumar Chaudhary, DRM, Katihar Division of Northeast Frontier Railways, said that we are ready to start the services. The train is ready with maximum facilities. Around 15 to 20 passengers have already booked their tickets for the first journey. It is a deck service and no pantry car facility. We have installed a number of CCTV cameras on the platform as well as a railway protective force. Personnel will be deputed in every corner. The border security force will take the train at Haldibari station and hand it over to Bangladesh at the zero line, he added. The Indian Meteorological Department has said that India may expect more rainfall this monsoon than earlier. India can expect more rainfall this monsoon season than predicted earlier, Weather Office said on May 31st. The average rainfall this monsoon season is expected to be 103% of the long period average. The Indian Meteorological Department Director General Ritunjay Mohapatra told the media. In April, the IMD had said the country would receive normal rainfall 99% of long period average. Most parts of the country will have good and well-distributed rainfall activity. Mohapatra said releasing the updated long-range forecast of rainfall for the current monsoon season. He said the central and peninsular India can expect 106% of long-period average rainfall, while the northeastern region could get below normal rains. The IMD had announced the onset of monsoon over Kerala on May 29th, which has 3 days ahead of the normal onset date. India's GDP grows 4.1% in Q4, expands 8.7% in FY22. India's economy grew 4.1% year-on-year in the January-March period of 2021 to 2022 Q4 FY22, even as the rate of growth slowed sequentially for a third straight quarter, with the Omicron wave-induced restrictions and high commodity prices weighing on economic activities. The National Statistics Office on May 31st pared down the overall growth estimate for FY22 to 8.7% from 8.8% projected in February. In FY22, all sectors except trade, hotels and communication services were above the pre-pandemic levels of FY20. The growth in private final consumption expenditure or private spending decelerated sequentially in Q4 to 1.8%, proving to be the weakest link. Government spending, however, picked up to grow at 4.8%, supporting overall growth. Gross fixed capital formation, which represents investment demand in the economy, slowed to 5.1%. On the supply side, the manufacturing sector contracted 0.2% in March quarter due to supply chain disruptions, while agricultural growth 4.1% remained robust despite third advance estimates projecting a decline in wheat output due to the ongoing heat wave. Indian Defence Ministry seals deal to procure air-to-air missile Astra. Indian Defence Ministry on May 31st signed a contract with Bharat Dynamics Limited (BDL) for the supply of Astra Mk1 beyond visual range air-to-air missile and associated equipment for the Indian Air Force and Indian Navy at a cost of Rs 2,971 crores under by Indian IDTM category. According to an official statement issued by the ministry, the technology to manufacture missiles of this class indigenously was not available till now. Astra Mk1 BVR AAM has been indigenously designed and developed by Defence Research and Development Organisation based on the staff requirements issued by the Indian Air Force, catering for beyond visual range as well as close combat engagement, reducing the dependency on foreign sources. Air-to-air missile with BVR capability provides large standoff ranges to own fighter aircraft which can neutralize adversary aircraft without exposing themselves to adversary air defense measures, thereby gaining and sustaining superiority of the airspace, the statement read. Astra Mk1 missile and all associated systems for its launch and ground handling and testing have been developed by DRDO in coordination with the IAF, it stated. World-famous Valley of Flowers to open on June 1st till October 31st, 2022. Good news for people who like trekking and flowers. The world-famous Valley of Flowers trek in Chamoli district of Uttarakhand is all set to open from June 1st, 2022. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Valley of Flowers is situated in the Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve. The place is filled with colourful and incredible flowers like marigolds and orchids. You can also see different species of birds, butterflies and animals in the area. The place will remain open till October 31st, 2022. Trekking will not be allowed after that. The area is filled with rare and exotic Himalayan flora. It is home to over 300 species of flowers that also include anemones, geraniums, primulas, blue poppy and bluebell. One of the most tourist attractions is Brahma Kamal, the state flower of Uttarakhand. In the background, you can see the magnificent Himalayan ranges with beautiful flowers. While trekking, you will get to see some dense forest and Pushpavati river. You will also see the beautiful bridges, glaciers and waterfalls. It is one of the most scenic spots in India. It serves as an attractive tourist spot for travelers and trekkers across the globe. You can see snow-clad peaks, musk deer, bears and snow leopards. The park, which is situated in Uttarakhand's Chamoli district, was closed for 2 years due to COVID-19 pandemic. A new teaser of Ranbir Kapoor and Alia Bhatt starrer titled Brahmastra is out now. Take a look. As 100 days are left for Brahmastra.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you in this segment. And as we had that sad news yesterday about the passing away of KK after a concert in Kolkata. So our, we wishes and we thinking of him and the family. Well, right now it's time to go to our upcoming functions and events. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you in this segment today. With that, we need to say goodbye, and we'll love to see you all tomorrow back at 9 a.m. with the morning news. Well, right now, as I mentioned before, weather has been very good, slightly cool, but mostly sunny, going up another degree to 14 degrees. Until tomorrow, it's goodbye from me.